some song.
There's this guy that there's this.
Welcome everybody. We're live now. Everybody can hear everything. So welcome, one and all. Anybody who might be out there watching in YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. Welcome. It looks like we're good across the board. So go ahead and switch over to us. Welcome everybody. And it looks things are looking okay, I think. So let me go ahead and
change the titles this time.
Oh, dang it! I knew I dropped something. Blast it all.
There's always something, right, on live streams.
Yeah, it looks like maybe Twitch isn't quite right, but that's okay. What are we doing? We're doing labs open office hour.
Don't worry. On the video afterwards, you can just prop it off. You just trim. Yeah. No one will know.
Back. Copy that. Redo all this. Paste. Update.
Twitch needs a dark mode.
They do.
Oh, there is. Oh, so I can have Twitch up and it's not like super making my face super white.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, amazing.
Okay. So it looks like we're okay. Let's see here. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Yay! All right. So yep, looks like we're connected and broadcasting across the board. Everything looks okay. All right. So
nice.
Oh, you like? Oh, cool. So, new thing for this stream, I did. I have some background music going. This is royalty free. It's by Stream Beats. A guy named Harris Heller puts out a few different playlists of 100% royalty free, blah 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 music. It's super awesome. It's just real light. I don't know if you guys probably can't hear it unless you're actually listening to the stream, but I can, and so can everybody else.
We'll have to do our own, man. We got enough musicians in the company to knock something out that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be fun. There is a Puget Systems playlist on Spotify, but that isn't royalty-free stuff. It's just kind of music that one of our guys in sales, Gino, puts together. Pretty cool.
Yeah, don't worry, it's really not music produced by Puget Systems.
That'd be awesome, man.
It'd be neat.
We get some of that horn thing going, some of that brass.
Right, yeah. Matt and John could do a whole like brass
groove,
thing.
Man.
It'd be great.
Man, I haven't played in like 4 years. It would sound awful.
All right, so welcome everybody. We have Dr. Don Kinghorn and Matt Bach joining us today for our Labs Open Office Hour. This is just kind of an opportunity to kind of ask questions of our labs guys, kind of get an idea of what they're working on, and just kind of chit-chat about what they are most experts in, hardware, software, and kind of the crossover there. So you guys. Oh, so it's still a bit of a surprise for some people that we are streaming this on Twitch. People are every time we do this, it's like, oh my gosh, I thought you guys had disappeared. So this is fun.
Nope, the cat still exists. We just don't use it.
Right.
Except recently.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Houston, I loved the Twitch build stream.
Oh, me too.
That was so fun. When we did those, I had so much fun with that. Just hanging out right down there on the build bench.
It was really good stuff. I have some ideas for builds in the future, but I don't really want to talk about that in public. I don't want to get people too hyped up for something that may or may not happen. So welcome everybody. Hi, how are you guys doing? It seems to be getting really warm, at least around me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I was actually looking up on Amazon, like, okay, how cheap are AC units that are just enough to cool like an office?
Yeah.
And I don't know. We'll see. For like the 2 weeks a year that it's actually hot around here.
I've already set mine up.
Oh yeah.
I've got two of those portable things. I've got one in the bedroom and one here in my office. The office gets really hot because with the computers running and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it's a big plus. And I've got a lot of noise outside because of the trail that's out there. So being able to kind of like close the window, still be cool. Yeah, it's nice.
That's nice. That is definitely nice. Right on. So I know you both you guys have been kind of working on some stuff. We touched on a little bit before the stream happened, and so I just kind of lost my train of thought. But
we had a good conversation going, man.
There was some good things that I think it would be just cool we can just kind of keep those conversations going. We had kind of mentioned Don, you'd brought up the WSL thing. What was that again? I can't remember.
It's Windows Subsystem for Linux.
That's the one. I keep thinking Windows Socket Layer, and that doesn't really make any sense. And then there's like the AI stuff and machine learning. I know that Don, and then there's a crossover with how that works with post-production and
it's awesome.
Things like the content-aware fill that came out with Photoshop first, and then now they do that with After Effects and things like that. So it's a
huge deal. It's a huge deal for all that stuff.
Yeah, I was actually I was recording a podcast with Photo Taco the other day, which I think is going to be going up like next month or something like that. And one of the questions, I guess it's kind of spoiling that podcast. One of the questions, like, what are you excited about, like, coming in? And I think they were referring to hardware, which, like, the only thing I could come up with was like persistent memory was like the only thing that like is kind of exciting. But I said that like AI is actually the thing that's going to be the biggest like game changer here in the future, and already is, because like it does so much behind the scenes. Like people don't realize that even in like Adobe products, like AI is everywhere already. They're using it every day. They just have no idea.
Right.
Yeah. The thing is, there's a lot of that stuff that's got long history. Computer vision goes way back, and there's classical algorithms for that stuff. And they were a lot of work to develop, and they require a lot of tuning and performances. That's why you've had some nice stuff like face recognition and stuff in your cameras for a long time. But all of that stuff is being replaced by machine learning trained inference engines that are doing the same thing, only way better and way more efficiently. And so it's replacing a lot of those traditional old computer vision algorithms. And there's no stopping that, because that's a fantastic use case.
Well,
super resolution, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, some of it is like, I think people are expecting like tagging like what's in a photo or a video. Like, yes, there's a cat here. Great, so now you can search for cats. Or like what's other things that are very traditional kind of machine learning things? Like you mentioned facial recognition, so you can actually like search through all your photos for a picture of yourself or your daughter or whatever, which I already use a bunch, because I use Google Photos to keep track of all of our personal photos, and it's amazing how good it is. Like, just like, okay, this person is my wife, and then suddenly it just knows all of them. Yeah. Although I will admit, it got really confused. We just had a baby boy a month ago, and it's been really confused between him and my daughter when she was born 3 years ago. So it's okay with newborns. It's got some problems.
Babies kind of all look the same.
Babies, they all kind of look the same. So that I'll forgive it that. But like everything else, like it's just amazing that I can just be like, hey, we're putting together a like puzzle. We're making a puzzle for my grandparents. So let's find all of the pictures with grandma, grandpa, and this kid. And then just, here you go. Like, it removes all of the effort from Christmas presents, which is good and bad.
And what is that? What is that NVIDIA thing? Is it DLSS or something? That deep learning super sampling?
You're talking about the thing where you can take a low res photo and like basically enlarge it, but instead of just like getting pixelated, it then looks at like, okay, this is a picture. I know this is a picture of a car. Let's fill in what those details would be. Like, that's amazing. I've seen people use that for like old videos of like a train, I think was one of the examples. Super grainy, old black and white film, like video of a train moving, and then they super scale it. And like, it looks amazing, because I mean, Google knows what those trains look like. There's videos and pictures all over the place of one of those trains.
That stuff is getting actually really, really, really good. That's even, I just saw an article yesterday on like CAT scans, 3D medical imaging essentially, and they're doing essentially that on there, so they can do a lot faster scans, and they can instead of using all their traditional algorithms because they get all those layers and all those image perspectives, and then they crunch that stuff all together into a 3D model that they can look at. Well, they're applying the same kind of idea into that, and it looks amazing. It's that's a big deal. There's a lot of medical stuff going on with AI, and it's getting really good.
Yeah, because they've been using that for like cancer detection and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's related just with computer vision. That was one of the things that really took off quick with the machine learning stuff was the convolution networks of being able to take a giant huge image set and then get prediction from that. Also that kind of anything that involves like an image and then targeting information, and that image could be cats, or it could be tissue slides for cancer. It's the same kind of principle, and that works really, really well. It's getting super good. There's in fact, I think I'm going to do another course. I always try to do like a Coursera course, something especially. I haven't done it for a while. I just haven't been in the mood. But Andrew Ng's got a new one on deep learning, medical AI, and it looks really good.
Cool.
I really want to do that.
That's neat.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, so let's see. No questions from the chat quite yet. So another, yeah, I mean, which is totally cool. Like this is kind of an opportunity just to chat, and if there are any other questions that come up, we can always take them as well.
Yeah, Matt, I have a question.
Hey.
Yeah. I almost asked it before we started, but I didn't want to spoil. Matt, have you encountered? Have you been bumping into anything with Microsoft's DirectML?
A little bit, actually. The only thing that I know off the top of my head is Lightroom Classic. They added a enhanced details feature that takes, for raw photos, it applies an AI algorithm to actually do the debayering, turning raw sensor data into like an actual, RGB color. And that is using Windows ML on Windows, and Apple, is it Core ML or something? I forget what the Apple one is, but it's actually using those. That's the only ones that I know are using it directly, because I think a lot of Adobe stuff, they have their own like whole system, their whole Adobe Sensei kind of thing.
Oh yeah. A lot of Adobe stuff is really low level, but it has been kind of off my radar. But I saw something at the Microsoft Build meeting here, whatever, week or so ago, and I had never really looked at this. But yeah, they've got a couple of fairly high level things. There's one that's a little bit higher level that's ends ML, and they're using that in a lot of the game engines and stuff. But then there's this DirectX, right?
Yeah.
DirectX 12. That's the latest one, correct? Isn't that DirectX 12?
So.
Yes.
I honestly haven't been paying attention to DirectX since I stopped playing video games.
Hey, yeah. But the thing, this was really, really cool, and this was a couple of significant things came up on that, and yeah, it really caught my attention. Okay, DirectX is, that's Microsoft's video engine, right? I mean, that's how they grind stuff out on the video cards. So that's a fairly low. That's like kind of like OpenGL, right? But it's actually a lot more robust. There's a lot of stuff in DirectX, and this DirectML is using that under the hood. So that's what's giving So this DirectML is a machine learning layer that interacts with DirectX as its kind of low level, like in place of CUDA. Okay, so this is kind of an alternative to CUDA, and the thing that's really interesting, and you know, we were talking about that a little bit before we started, and you know, we had, I wasn't on the meeting, but you had a meeting with AMD a little while back, right?
Oh, I don't know. We have meetings with AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA all the time.
Well, yeah, I know,
Adobe.
but there was
one?
something, and they were like bugging us. They were going, "When are you going to do GPU compute on?"
Oh yeah, I know they're very interested in that because a lot of their like Radeon Pro stuff, that's a big thing that they're pushing on, is improving their like AI and machine learning stuff.
Well, that's the thing with this. With DirectX, that puts a layer between the hardware that's hardware agnostic.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and the thing that really kind of surprised me. So anything that's basically using this DirectX 12 ML layer can run on. It's not just restricted to NVIDIA GPUs. And so this provides a layer to use the AMD GPUs, probably in a really, really good way. And it looks like Google is doing they're collaborating with Microsoft and doing a build using DirectML as a low-level backend on TensorFlow.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and okay, now that is,
Yeah, that would be really cool.
that one totally caught me off guard when I saw that. I was going, whoa, okay, I really need to look at this, because that's, you know, this is a big deal, because OpenCL is like an alternative to CUDA, and
Right.
you know, pretty much everybody that's doing dev work has just decided that sucked a long time ago.
Yeah. It
And
seems like
that's
devs love CUDA, hate OpenCL.
Yeah, CUDA's awesome, and NVIDIA is brilliant what they did. You know, I mean, there's a reason that they're just killing it on the MLAI stuff. But the AMD hardware is actually really quite good, and I mean, it has been from the get-go. You know, when I first started doing this, actually AMD sent me some stuff, some of their high-end, their compute stuff, but it was so it was so difficult to use. It was almost like assembly language to do anything with the cards. And it never really changed.
And so, just to interject real quick, is there a reason CUDA cannot run on AMD stuff? Like, is it a?
Because NVIDIA
Is it
made
just?
It's NVIDIA, man.
So it's just because they don't like each other. There isn't like a physical like, oh, AMD crunches numbers differently, and so it cannot possibly work.
CUDA
It's
CUDA
just-
is a build environment. There's a compiler, so you compile these kernels with CUDA that are targeted specifically to the hardware.
Okay.
So hardware differences, boom. Yeah, no, there is some stuff to essentially do a translation from some of the CUDA stuff. What's this thing called? Oh, dang it! I can't remember it off the top of my head. But it actually, ROCm, I think.
Okay.
That's a way to do some of the stuff that has been done in CUDA, and we just kind of like port it over and run it on AMD. But yeah, I haven't played with it. I've wanted to look at it for a couple of years. It's been around for a while. But the DirectX angle, I think, is like, oh man, that could really be a good way to go.
You know, it's funny. I'm super excited about how accessible AI stuff is going to be. Probably because like what it's going to be able to do, but I keep getting my head spinning of like, oh man, how can I actually start making my benchmarks easier? That's been, I mean, so much of my day it seems like is like programming actually, and you know, trying to get benchmarks to run. But none of these applications are made to have benchmarks run. But like if I could use AI, I could start reading like these FPS numbers that are not logged anywhere, but just like displayed. I could start using that to like read those things.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt. I promised you I would work on that.
Oh, years ago. Yeah, I remember that. And like I had a working solution for that, like a brute force solution. But then like we decided like, no, that's too much work. But if AI can get like easier to do, like I've always just had the problem of I want to just like tell it, here's a bunch of photos, here's what they mean, and then figure it out. But like I've never like, it seems like there's still like a little bit of a barrier for people to get into. And once they cross that barrier, it opens up everything. But it's still like that entry. It feels like what like video editing was like 10 years ago. Or like, okay, you want to be a video editor, you want to edit any home movies or whatever, you've got to figure this stuff out. You got to take some courses first. And now it's like, I can just do it on my phone, whatever. Like, yeah, I took a video now on Google Photos. It lets me trim and apply effects and do all that kind of stuff.
Well,
Like, it feels like AI stuff is just that close.
It is close. Well, but it's still actually, it's really quite early days for all this.
Oh,
but,
for sure.
But that, that's the general effort.
Mm-hmm.
Is to and a lot of effort is going in to make tools that are easier to use, that don't require programming, don't require setting up Python and loading frameworks and doing all this stuff, but just actually something that's end user friendly and customizable, that's happened. That stuff's coming actually, I think probably pretty soon. I mean, within a couple of years anyway. That's
it's kind of scary saying that it's early, because seeing what people are doing with like the deep fake stuff, and they're doing that now for voices.
Yeah.
And even like language, like how people write. So you can fake how people look, you can fake how people sound, and how they talk. Like, it's a little bit scary. But then like you also see these really cool implementations of like, oh, this actor passed away, and we can do like a few extra scenes, nods to them, callbacks and that kind of stuff, and it'll look way better than Grand Moff Tarkin and was it Rogue One?
Yeah,
like it just didn't look quite right.
That's an interesting bit, especially about the voice. I just saw this thing, Don Rickles, who I think did the voice of Mr. Potato Head in the Toy Story. He died before he was able to record any lines for, I think it was Toy Story 4. And by going over like everything he'd ever done, and both recorded for previous Toy Stories and like previous works in general, they were actually able to cobble together all of his lines for that movie.
Yeah, but that was like highly manual. That was like snipping out here, pasting there. And like what you should be able to do is throw it into an AI, like, here's everything he's ever said before,
and now I
type
can
out a thing, or like have someone talk so you get like the inflections, and then it just puts it on. Like,
it's actually really kind of there, but it's still very much at a research level.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not seeing too much of it.
I hope it is, or it's already out there and no one knows.
Well, I've seen some things where they've like edited like news press releases and stuff, news clips where they've redone the footage with like Obama's voice saying stuff, and it warps the way that his mouth moves to like move the words correctly, and it's smart enough that it sounds like him. Like if I didn't know any better, it's pretty crazy stuff.
I mean, I don't want to get into politics on this kind of a stream, but like the politics implemented, or like, that is, I think, the scariest area.
Oh yeah,
for that kind of stuff. Like entertainment, whatever. Like entertainment's great, but politics and all of that kind of stuff is where it's scary.
Yeah,
but I know, aren't they doing a lot of work on like AI detection at the same time?
I know Photoshop has put out a thing that says like, oh, we have a tool that can detect that this photo's been edited, and in what way even. Like they can tell, from looking at the pixels, I guess, or something. They do their science magic, and they can tell like, oh, this was a blur, this was a certain brush, or what have you, and like they can deconstruct it even. It's like, it's pretty cool.
It's a battle. I mean, there's teams working on detecting fakes, and then the fakers are working at beating the fake detectors.
It's the same.
And that
cybersecurity
is actually a field of AI, the general adversarial networks, GANs. That's how you train a GAN.
Yeah.
You have a network that generates images, and another network that detects whether it's fake or not.
Oh, that's cool.
And they play off of each other to learn to get better and better and better at making fakes and detecting fakes.
So AI is teaching AI.
Oh yeah.
So Skynet starts.
I saw that part in War Games. It's okay. It learns.
Okay, great.
The only winning move is not to play.
There you go.
Okay, I'll just go nomad, or permit. Just turn off all technology. Which honestly, though, like on a serious note, like I've actually done that more and more, especially since like I started working from home so much. Like I found I need to do that. Like I've turned off email notifications on my phone,
Mm-hmm.
and like I make sure that like things are turned off, and like I'm not super always pressed for it, because like I feel like you kind of have to start. You have to do that. It feels like these days. Otherwise, you're just always connected, and you can never
Yeah.
be apart.
Yeah, definitely. I'm feeling that too, kind of a lot. You know, you have to just kind of pull back so that you can have some space where you can actually think and work.
Mhm. It's just so
Otherwise
funny
you
with
just-
right now, like we're so isolated, like with each other, yet I don't want to be that connected to
Right.
like
It's not to go too deep on it, but it's a different kind of connection. Like
Yeah.
it's not nearly the same. Even this is like I'm still basically all by myself. You know, there's something missing from it all. Yeah. So, somebody early on had asked something that we'd almost started going deep into before the stream, is like, do you think Linux on the desktop will become more prominent in the future? This is from Doron on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Well,
I bet we have
there's a
very
couple-
different
Yeah.
opinions of this, Don.
Which is great.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I use Linux myself, like most of the time. However, Windows has made huge improvements. From my perspective, it's massive improvements, and I essentially have my Linux desktop and my Windows desktop. They're almost identical, and the work
Cool.
that I can do on both of them is almost identical at this point.
And
It's
is that
pretty
from just
amazing, really.
from a user experience standpoint, like the X in the upper right and file drop downs and things
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
sure. Yeah, if I wanted to, you can make Linux. I mean, there's that one thing about the Linux desktop is there's like a zillion of them to choose from,
Right.
and lots of customization. So you can customize it to look like almost anything. People have done almost exact replicas of the Windows appearance
Cool.
in some of the desktops. But it doesn't matter. It's how usable the desktop is, and the Linux desktops and Windows desktops, they're both perfectly usable. I mean, they're fine. And I don't think, Linux on the desktop using, that's always a thing. It's like, okay, this is the year of Linux on the desktop. You absolutely 100% can do that. However, if you are like your background, it goes back and you were a Unix workstation users, you're going to absolutely love the Linux desktop. If you're coming from Mac OS or from Windows, it's going to be kind of a struggle, even though it is very similar and very intuitive and easy to use. There's still that crossover that's difficult to deal with, and I don't think people really have to do that. I think you can just go with what you want, like you're comfortable with. I use now Linux is incredibly important because that's what's driving all of the enterprise and infrastructure of the world.
Right.
That's the stuff you don't see on your desktop, and for developers, for researchers, scientific kind of researchers, that whole workflow and that whole ecosystem goes all the way back to the heyday of the Unix workstation era, and that's Linux actually replaced all that. So if you look at developers on like TensorFlow and PyTorch and all, they're all doing all of that stuff is on Linux, and so all of that kind of work, if it's scientific computing, it's probably going on Linux.
Makes sense.
It's just related there. So from that respect, if that's your thing, then yeah, you might be better off on a Linux desktop environment, just like it was a Unix workstation of old. But this, I actually kind of wanted to talk about this because there was a few things that were really cool I'm a Linux user literally almost from day one. I was on the Minix mailing list when Torvalds announced that he was building a kernel. I mean, I really saw that thing on Usenet. So
Don's a Linux hipster.
Hey, I've done it from the early days, but I also used Windows too. And I was at the time I was using Steve Jobs' best work ever. The NAX. That was a Unix workstation that was just fantastic, and that's actually the OS interface now for Mac OS.
Oh, neat.
Okay, that's where it came from. In fact, it's all essentially that's where the whole OS came from. Mac OS, OS X, whatever. But anyway, yeah. Okay.
What do you think, Matt?
Just gotta calm down.
While Don takes a breath, it's your turn.
I agree with Don on a lot of that stuff. Like the heavy metal stuff, Linux, definitely, because you're trying to eke out every little bit of performance per watt and per dollar, and you're going to get that on something like Linux where you can really strip it down. And like scientific stuff that again that's really heavy compute. So scientific stuff, I think there's a lot of like people that are doing heavy simulation work, like engineering simulations. Like if that's all the system is doing, they probably are running that on Linux. But like desktop, now this might be just my opinion because like working with Puget Systems, like our customer base is primarily the people who just want it to work.
Right.
But I feel like that's kind of general society's kind of take on technology these days is they just want it to work. And as good as Linux is, no matter what, if you're installing Linux on a computer, you're going to Google at least a handful of times to figure out why isn't my audio working, or why isn't this video working, or why isn't my boot thing not right.
I have the same problem with Windows.
Really?
More so than
Windows
Linux.
is supposed to be like
it's what you
just
know.
work.
It's just what you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Like,
And that's the thing. And I think the people who Linux is what they know, it's becoming less and less of the overall like user base. Like there's still tons of people out there. There's still tons of like power users who really love Linux and they want to use it. And that's awesome. Like nothing against those guys. It's not me at all. But I don't think that is an increasing percentage of the population. If anything, I think that's decreasing, especially with how like connected people are on like their phones now, and like they've gotten used to their phones. Like, oh, it's Android or it's Apple, and
Right.
that's just okay. That's what it is. And I think that's starting to carry over to computers as well, just because like I mean, really, what's the difference between mini laptops these days and your phone? Is like, well, it's bigger.
screen
Yeah,
size.
that's a good point, Matt. I mean, and that's kind of the thing. I mean, even the stuff that I've been working on in labs, right?
Mhm.
I mean, now I'm running servers. I've set up. I've got a Linux OS set up. It's server. There's no GUI on it. It's just text. But what I set up on there was an admin interface to make it. This is all through the browser.
Mhm.
Everything is done through a browser, and it's intuitive. It's easy. It's like what you would expect, and it doesn't matter what OS you're using to access it. It makes no difference. It could be a Chromebook. It could be your phone. It could be a Linux desktop. It could be Windows. It could be anything. And the main setup on there is Jupyter Hub, and that's for doing all this machine learning and AI stuff. So
Right.
and what is on there is the standard interface that most people would use. Jupyter Hub, and then like VS Code editor just directly connected to that server. It doesn't matter what you're running on, and it's exactly the same. So it's taking advantage of that. Those tools that are for that kind of development work that are Linux based, but you can do it from anywhere, so it doesn't matter. The other thing on there, and that I kind of wanted to throw this out because I was actually really kind of excited about. I thought it was really cool. From Microsoft Build, one of my favorite. I can go over to Windows and I can do anything I want to do. And part of that is because I've got Linux on Windows. I mean, Microsoft has Linux now.
Right.
WSL 2, the Windows subsystem for Linux, version 2, uses a Linux kernel that Microsoft made.
Oh, so it's like their own sort of their own distro of Linux.
It's as much Linux as Android is. I mean, that's a Linux kernel that's on there, right?
Sure.
So it's kind of that same thing. Well, it's even deeper than that. I mean, because it actually is Linux and it's their kernel. So really, I think you could probably, without stretching it too far, say that's Microsoft Linux.
Yeah, in the same way that it's like Red Hat or Gentoo or Ubuntu or like that kind of. It's like their own flavor.
The interactive layer, is Linux distros that you would use, but the kernel underneath on WSL2 is a Microsoft built kernel.
Neat.
So I usually use Ubuntu on there, but there's SUSE and CentOS and stuff like that. You can different Linux.
And you're running that from within Windows, so it's almost like a virtual machine, kind of. Except you don't have all the terribleness of virtual machines.
It's basically a low-level virtual machine, and it's at when you enable WSL2, it actually uses Hyper-V under the hood.
Okay.
But it does it at the same. If you turn on Hyper-V on Windows, then your Windows OS becomes client number 0. It becomes a actually virtual client.
Huh.
But it's because Hyper-V is a low-level hypervisor. It runs right on the hardware. So anything, including your Windows OS, is on top of that.
Whoa.
But it's your host OS is hooked at a very low level. So there's essentially, you don't even know it. WSL is kind of hooked into that same level. So you don't have a whole Hyper-V stuff. Not everything is turned on when you do WSL2, but it does enable that. You have to reboot the system when you do this. Okay.
Okay.
And
which makes sense.
So it runs on there. By doing that, the performance now of this Linux running on Windows is really close to it, like a native Windows running or native Linux running on the same hardware.
Wow.
Okay, and it's a massive speed up.
All that makes me think is, hey, that'll make benchmarking way easier.
Well,
because we just have all of our test platforms running Windows, and if, you need to run some Linux stuff, you can just run it.
Well, what would be the advantage of this using WSL over just having your own, like, say, dual booting?
Oh, no. Okay, the reason that Microsoft is doing this is because Linux is hugely important for developers.
Okay.
I mean, and for Microsoft, Azure, I mean, that's their future. That's their cash cow.
Sure.
And people working on there have to have a Linux environment to do their dev work. So that's why they did this, because they wanted to provide those development tools on Windows directly.
Okay.
And so that's the motivation for
Smart.
it. The thing is, it's getting really, really good. I mean, it was, and this is one of the things that excited me that I saw. And okay, right now my Windows workstation, my nice Windows workstation, right, Core X, 12 core, whatever, great box. I'm running the Insider edition of Windows on there right now, and I just bumped it up to fast ring.
Whoa.
Because I'm really anxious.
Yeah.
One of the things that was announced at Build was that, and NVIDIA is helping them with this, they're going to put GPU support into WSL2.
Oh, that'll be huge.
That is huge. That's massively huge. Because, see, the way it is right now, you don't have direct access to like the hardware drivers and stuff like that. So you didn't have GPU. You could put an X server on Windows and you can run Linux graphical applications through X like you would do any kind of X application. But this, they're going to put direct GPU access into WSL2. So that means, and I've already installed stuff like TensorFlow. I've installed the the CUDA and the NVIDIA drivers. I've installed all that stuff into WSL. The thing is, it doesn't work because there's no GPU there. I mean, it doesn't see a GPU. But this thing that they're doing, and I thought it was already done. I was chomping at the bit to do this. That's why I brought that Quadro card home. I was thinking that I might have to use Quadro for this to start off. But by the end of June, they should have a release of this in the fast ring on the Insider build that has some GPU access in it.
Cool.
And that would mean that you could run something like TensorFlow with GPU acceleration in WSL2. That means that you could pull the Docker images from NVIDIA's NGC, which is insanely great. So all this great stuff that NVIDIA's done up there for those frameworks and all that stuff, you can pull that stuff down into Docker images and run it on WSL on your Windows machine. And you should also be able to run directly this stuff that I just was talking about. This thing I've been calling the machine learning appliance. All of those servers and stuff that I'm running on there, Jupyter Hub and stuff, that doesn't run on Windows. But this will run on WSL, and you could run that and then have it running on your local machine and connect to it with your browser. It's all right there. And it's seamless as far as the experience of the developer and the user that's using this stuff. It's just there.
So you mean I can finally be playing a video game and doing machine learning
and
with TensorFlow?
Right.
Does kind of bring up an interesting question. Does that mean, could that then potentially mean like the very core of Windows could eventually evolve to under the hood essentially be no different? Because you're saying like, oh, you can make Linux distro look and act a lot like Windows. Could Windows then slowly evolve into just like Matt was saying, like video? A big reason people still use Windows is video games. That's probably like 80% of why anybody still uses Windows. You can
anyone in like content creation.
Hyperbole,
it's a very serious
yeah,
use case.
Hyperbole. But like
me too.
Could we see the core of Windows eventually evolve into becoming a Linux?
No.
Like at its
no,
core?
absolutely not.
Okay.
They're fundamentally different, and I can tell you exactly why. Linux is that replaced Unix. Okay. I mean,
Right.
Microsoft was all worried about Linux being a competitor to them. Linux killed off their biggest competitors. It killed off essentially the Unix workstation world.
Okay.
Because nobody in their right mind is going to, I won't say that because that's still great, and there's still stuff out there. But Linux is just insanely great for that stuff, that world. But Microsoft, where Windows came from, its legacy is Windows NT.
Right.
Okay. Now, this is a history lesson, and not very many people know this, but when Digital Equipment Corporation, that was the biggest computer company in the world, DEC, they bid it. They kind of bid it because they just forced so much vendor lock-in that there was backlash, and there was other competitors like from Hewlett Packard and IBM and Sun Microsystems, but DEC eventually bid it. And when they did, but DEC had insanely great programmers there. They had really, really good people. Those people went from DEC to two places. The compiler writers and all those guys, they went to Intel. Okay, that's where it. I'm not all of these, but some key people. So Intel got some really brilliant folks out of that deal. But Microsoft, they were running on DOS.
Right.
Like Windows used to be just like a GUI on top of DOS. So that was like, no, that's lame. So Windows.
I remember it being awesome.
I remember the 3.0 and 3.1 days. Like, yeah.
I mean, it was awesome. It really was awesome.
You could like move your mouse and things moved and stuff.
Yeah. It was actually really cool. But Windows NT was like a serious OS.
Right.
Okay. And that's the legacy of that is VMS. That's the VAX. Oh man, I can't even remember the stupid acronym. But that was VMS is what ran on DEC VAX. So digital equipment had their VAX systems, and that's what drove business and stuff like that. Those were huge, and that was a huge lock-in. But that underlying OS is very different from the Unix OS. That's the history of Windows. So Windows NT, those people came from DEC to Microsoft, and they built Windows NT, and that's what Windows is now. So it's a very good OS, okay? But the on the Unix side, on the Linux side, the whole model there is like sockets and files. Everything is basically a file, and even sockets look like files. It's a very simple design, and it's this communication with pipes and sockets back and forth. On Windows, everything in Windows is an API.
Okay.
So instead of having these pipelines where you're communicating like over a socket, on Windows you're making API calls to do everything. So they're fundamentally different. It makes it, that's why being able to do things like some of the stuff that they have done is really remarkable, because they have to put translation layers between, so they have to put kind of APIs in there to simulate the socket kind of workflow on some of that Linuxy, Unixy kind of stuff that's in there. But yeah, it's never going to be, it's fundamentally different OS. Yeah, fundamentally different.
Nuts.
they could do, in fact, this was some of the speculation that what is the thing called Windows X or something like that they're going to be doing on ARM and all this. That could actually be very different under the hood, because it'd be like a modular Windows, and they could actually sneak in some design change under the hood there that is fundamentally different.
Weren't they already kind of doing some stuff with like Windows Phone years back? Are Windows phones even a thing still?
Not really, but there's a legacy there. Some of that team and that work that they did is still there.
Yeah.
And that's there was some excitement last year about this Windows X. They were going to use it on their like dual screen cool little device and stuff like that. And it's a different kind of Windows. But they could totally do that. They could make a full under the hood Linux that has essentially a look and feel of the current Windows 10 desktop. You could totally do that.
Yeah, I doubt they would. They have so much.
There's no reason.
There's no way they're convincing their corporate.
They've got millions and millions and millions of lines of code. There's no way. And the NT under the hood there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good OS, and it's
worked fine so far.
Yeah, I mean, I used it for scientific computing for a long time before Linux really became like, yeah, you're just going to use Linux. But I didn't have any problem. I used Microsoft's Fortran, their Visual Fortran. I wrote scientific code in Visual Fortran on Windows NT.
Whoa. And
it was great. It was easy. It was no problem, and it ran great. Yeah, it's weird. They've kind of split, but yeah, they're very different. Long story.
So in other words, Houston, the 10-minute answer is that the short answer is no.
No, it ain't gonna happen.
No.
Now you know why, right?
Well, no, and I do appreciate kind of some, like, I hadn't realized that, like, it is really an almost an architecture difference, like the way that they handle.
Oh yeah, totally different.
The very nugget core of everything is just fundamentally different, and like I didn't know that. So
yeah, at the kernel level, it's fundamentally different.
That's interesting it's good to know some.
Yeah, Microsoft Windows is very much object oriented and API oriented. You make API calls.
Is that Santa? No. That's
Houston.
Don.
Ho ho ho!
Oh,
Really, Houston's
I love
got
it.
more of a Santa beard. It's just the wrong color.
Man, yeah, we'll give him a few years.
Yeah, right. It's
It'll
coming. It's
go.
getting
I
there.
promise,
It's
man.
getting there. It's like,
It'll
I got
promise.
these-
I promise.
That's
you.
why I have to keep mine shorter, because there's big patches of gray. You don't notice it as much when it's short.
Oh man, really? You get some gray in there, man?
Oh yeah, there's a big patch down here is all gray. Yeah,
Oh.
I have 3
I got
kids.
those.
Oh yeah. Hey, that'll do it.
I just have a lot of stress and anxiety, you know.
That too.
So there is a question. Isn't there an issue with Windows on ARM? They have to emulate 64-bit.
Okay. Okay. Windows. No. There is. Okay. There is Windows on ARM.
I'm seeing that with the Surface Pro X in particular.
Yeah,
Recently.
the thing. Okay, yeah, there's a lot. I don't know the details of that because I'm not really into that too much. But I do know about ARM, and I know kind of what's going on there. The one of the issues is there may be some issues with 64-bit, but that's totally solvable. That's not a showstopper in any way. The difficulty is they're trying to keep a compatibility layer to x86. So in order to make it actually viable to use, you have to be able to run Microsoft Office on ARM. So they have to put in an x86 layer that is but at a very low level that translates those instructions into machine instructions for ARM.
Weird.
And doing that emulation layer, if you will, is difficult, and that's even probably more difficult to do 64-bit x86 emulation translating to ARM instructions.
Oof.
So it's a challenging problem, but I think there's completely fine Windows running on ARM. It's just you can't run. In fact, I know there is, but you can't. The applications you aren't ported to ARM, and that's a huge deal. So it's not. I mean, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah, I've seen some of
so
that.
they need a layer to where you can run existing x86 on that ARM platform.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on there.
Because I'm seeing something just when I looked up Windows on ARM. That says I'm seeing a few mentions that like not all 64-bit apps are compatible, but it is a full-fledged Windows 10 on their new Surface Pro X. It's runs Windows 10 version 1903 and later. So
I mean,
it's
Microsoft has
not
been
even like a
pushing
different
everything.
kind.
They've been pushing everything to the web anyway. Like, was it Office 365? Like,
Right.
for the licenses you buy are just the web-based
Ugh.
ones. But yeah, I dealt with that with my mother-in-law. Bought a new laptop, and then she got Office 365 through her work. She does like online tutoring or something, or online classes, and like go to install it, and it's like, oh, there's. I guess I made like a shortcut in Chrome for you. There you go. But it's just so
that's
weird then too. Like dealing with files on that kind of stuff is weird. Like, and these
Chrome
ones,
OS.
like it syncs to your OneDrive too. But like, why do you even need it on your laptop if it's just going to be on the web? It's just so different for me. Oh, on the other hand, I'm using Google Drive for like everything these days, and for some reason that seems normal to me that stuff's all on the cloud. So maybe it's just my own biases of like I'm used to Word files being on your local computer.
I have to say the differences between OneDrive and Google Drive are substantial. Like the way OneDrive handles their like just file system is completely different. Like Google Drive at least seems to emulate the Windows File Explorer pretty well. Microsoft OneDrive really does not, and it's super weird. I've helped my girlfriend with she deals with OneDrive for some stuff, and it does not. It's just weird. Like their whole like from the ground up, it seems like they were completely disconnected from how like the Windows File Explorer works, and trying to make them work together is really awkward.
Which is kind of funny.
They will
Well,
change
but-
that.
Yeah,
I hope
It's
so,
funny
'cause
because
It's a pain in the butt.
Because right now they're not really using like Azure storage. I mean, they are, okay, but it's in a different way.
Huh.
So it'll be a lot more direct, and those kind of issues that they have to solve. Because they exactly do want to do that. They want to get people to use their host as a terminal to Azure, to the cloud. So they
Wow.
want that kind of an interface going. And
Is this gonna be
yeah,
running
so it
dumb
has to be
terminals?
seamless. I mean, it has to be totally what you're used to, or it won't fly. Besides, you're still going to want your own hardware.
Yeah.
'Cause you got a game, right?
So, do either of you or have a preferred Linux distro for testing computational workloads?
I know I do.
yeah, I haven't done anything with Linux since I was in production department, which is like I don't even remember how many years ago. Back then, it was all Ubuntu. We loved Ubuntu. I've done a little bit with CentOS. That's mostly because that's the preferred or only supported Linux distro for DaVinci Resolve.
Yeah.
So I've done a little bit with CentOS, and I liked CentOS, but not really for me. I'm sure you do, Don.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna come up with something super obscure.
It's like
No,
I built
just gonna be Ubuntu.
years ago.
no, totally. I mean, there's all kinds of Linux distributions, but I've been, for the last several years, I've just been using Ubuntu.
It seems to be wicked popular.
Not like GNOME 3.
Uh-oh.
So their default desktop? No, I don't.
Oh.
No way. I use Ubuntu and I use the Mate desktop.
Okay.
Mate is awesome. It's very, very good. There's another desktop that is fantastic on top of Ubuntu. Is like Linux Mint, uses Cinnamon.
That had been
That's
mentioned in the chat.
that is a wonderful user interface. It's really, really nice. In fact, I would recommend Linux Mint with Cinnamon to Windows users that want to try, want to mess around with a Linux desktop. It's really pretty nice.
Yeah, that actually had been brought up in chat a little bit ago. That it looks almost exactly like Windows.
You can make it, yeah. It's it's a great workflow, and that's a really nice interface. I set my Windows up so that it looks like Linux Mint. I move the bar up to the top.
Yeah.
And I set it up so I can go back and forth with my screenshots, and you would hardly even know which one was Linux and which one was Windows.
Oh,
I can't get onto bars at the top. That's always been and bars on the side. The people who do bars on the
those
side.
people,
I don't like that either.
That blows my mind. Like even when I see Mac OS people have their dock on the side of the monitor, weirds me out. I can't. It's so weird, so different, and I can't.
It's different, and that's bad.
Well, it just feels. Yeah, I mean, it's unfamiliar and makes you feel bad. So
There you go.
And for them, it works.
It's what you're used to.
So that's fine.
yeah,
I
don't know where that comes from though, because that's a conscious choice. Like I'm gonna put my bar over here, and I'm gonna just power through it. That's not like I can get the top kind of makes sense, sure, and the bottom is default, but like you had to train yourself to put it on the side there, and that says something about who you are fundamentally.
Maybe they just wanted more vertical space for their web pages or something. I don't know.
Ubuntu does that on their on their GNOME interface.
Oh, I'm never
It's
using
on the
that
side.
one.
And they put this icon stuff on the
that's
side of
so
this
weird.
dog. It's like, blah. I don't like it either. and as far as and this, I actually credit Microsoft with this, the WIMP interface, right? Windows icons, panels, whatever.
Sure.
But that basic layout that they, when did they, oh man, that goes way back. But I think
Way
probably Windows 95 is when they really kind of nailed that basic kind
the
of
start button
way that,
in the
this
corner and all
window,
that.
this bar, and this, this window that has your access to all that kind of stuff. That interface was brilliant. They put a lot of human engineering, human factors design work into that interface. It's really quite brilliant. I mean, and
Windows icons,
the more that you vary away from that, the weirder it gets.
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally cool to do that. And some people just like to, do something just totally crazy. And there's lots of options, but
maybe the next Labs Open office hours should just be things we hate about technology.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Oh man,
that would be great.
I had a few rants.
We'll just let everyone in the chat just like.
All right, you heard it.
Oh,
you heard it here
this.
first. Next week, it's just complaining for an entire
gonna
hour.
hate.
And everybody from Labs is going to get in on it, and they're going to only get one thing. What really grinds my gears.
And then the next week we'll do the things we love.
Yeah.
I really like that Adobe does this. I'll have to think about that one. But...
Right on.
man.
So that hour went by really fast, you guys. We are a little over. So do you? Is there anything you would like to mention or say, or anything?
Hey,
else you'd
I
like to
hope
mention or talk about before we go.
we just kind of I'm sitting here looking at you guys, and I know there are people out here that are, and thank you everyone for interacting and asking some questions and stuff. I hope hope you got some answers and actually kind of learned something and you're taking something away that you didn't know before you started. But yeah, it's always fun, and Matt, we hardly see each other anymore, so it's kind of nice.
We'll see if even after all this COVID-19 stuff, I don't know. I'm starting to be convinced that I just want to work from home more and more. We'll see.
It's pretty nice.
There's advantages. There's disadvantages.
There's disadvantages.
But once we can do like weekly, schedule all of the meetings on Tuesday or whatever.
Right.
People
yeah.
at the office on those days. Just everyone's there. That'll be good.
Okay, I stopped by the office yesterday. This is something I could rant about.
What overtime? Go for it.
I was doing a Linux. I was reinstalling on that 64L 4 GPU box down there that I'm testing this machine learning appliance stuff on. I was doing a fresh install on there, so I was down there hanging around for a while. And man, I was talking with Kyle down in install, and we were going on about stuff, and it was really fun. It was great especially I love going down into production and they're all kind of keeping distance, but there was great conversations going on. It was really fun.
Yeah.
And I missed, I kind of missed that. Yeah, good. It's a good bunch down there.
Well, all right then. I guess we'll say goodbye, and thanks everybody for tuning in, and like Don was saying, for interacting and giving us questions and kind of keeping things rolling. And thank you, Don. Thank you, Matt, for taking time out of the day to join us here on Friday for our Labs Open Office Hour. And for those of you who don't know, just kind of stumbling in on this today, we do this every Friday. Different members of our Labs team coming in to kind of just talk about what they're most experts in, kind of taking questions from the audience and that kind of a deal. Just to kind of get the knowledge out there beyond just our articles and things like that. Kind of get a little bit more of a just peek behind the curtain, I guess, in a way. So thanks to the audience, thanks to you guys very much. And like I said, we do this every Friday at 1:00 Pacific. We also do Workflow Wednesdays, where we bring on industry experts, kind of a similar sort of deal. They talk about what they're experts in, and ask them questions, take questions from the audience, and that's Wednesdays at 1:00 as well. So tune in Wednesdays, Fridays, 1:00 for all kinds of cool shenanigans and questions. I think that's it. Thanks, you guys.